I'm Jane Kane. I'm the library director for the town of Yarmouth here on Cape Cod. We are delighted to host author Holly FitzGerald today for a look into her 1973 adventure on the Madre de Dios River in the Amazon jungle. I thank you all for being here, and I thank the South Yarmouth Library Association, who is helping to fund our author visits this year, especially how much fun they are on the virtual platform. So thank you to the South Yarmouth Library Association for funding. We came to know of this book through one of our librarians who knows one of Holly's son-in-laws and recommended this book. So Chris Kaufman is here this afternoon with us in the Zoom meeting, and I want to thank her for this referral. Ruthless River is such a powerful book, and I understand it's being optioned as a movie. Holly, I hope that we will hear about this today. So that's great. I ask that you all at this time mute yourselves if you haven't already to allow for better audio as Holly makes her presentation. She will speak for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then after that, we can take questions. If you have questions as we're going along, type them into the chat box, and I'll organize the questions at the end for Holly. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you? Ruthless River, Love and Survival by Raft on the Amazon's relentless Madre de Dios has been featured in the New York Times and Outside Magazine, among other media outlets. It's been read by many book clubs across the United States, and this true story of adventure and terror has been recounted across the country on National Public Radio. Holly FitzGerald, our author today, is a resident of Dartmouth, Massachusetts, where she lives with her husband, Fitz. He's a former managing editor of the Standard Times newspaper and a lawyer. Holly had a career in social work and counseling, but fortunately, she took the time to write a riveting memoir. Please welcome Holly FitzGerald.
Oh, thank you very much. That was very nice. Thank you, Jane.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me today. And also, I do want to thank Chris Kaufman too, because she did find me and I guess told you, and then you got in touch with me. So that was wonderful. And I can't wait to see the Yarmouth Library in person when we're all able to get out. So my story, before I start my story, actually, I should thank those of you who did come too, even though I can't see you. I see a couple of you. That's very nice of you to take some time out of your day. Looks like a nice day out there. So thanks for coming to this presentation, Armchair Travel. This Armchair Travel is going to be a little bit different than your usual armchair travel because it does end up as a survival story too. So it's Ruthless River, love story and survival story when Fitz and I, my husband Fitz, when we were in our 20s. I just wanted to show you a picture this before we took this trip. We wanted, with a delayed honeymoon, that's what our plan was, to go around the world. And that's, this is not a slide, so I don't know if you can see it, but that we were coming down the aisle after we were married, and basically a regular traditional wedding, and starting off in a traditional way. But somewhere along that line, we thought early on that first year, why don't we were just renting a place, and we thought, why don't we save up, and instead of just taking a trip to one or two places, let's just go full hog and go all the way around the world. And I suppose, I don't know where we got that idea, but well, I think I got the idea somehow. And then Fitz, he agreed to it. He said, okay, great. He said, I've never been really too many places. I've been to a couple places with my parents. And before we end up buying a house and doing all of that, we decided to do a few extra jobs. He was a reporter and I was a social worker. as Jane said, and then we decided to do jobs at night and during the weekend to add this up fast. So we were able to do it within 9 months, and we didn't have responsibilities. So, we didn't have kids. So we thought this is the time to give it a try. We read a lot of guidebooks of doing it on the cheap, kind of backpacking. And so we were able to do it faster. Fitz got a really good job. First, he did a job at McDonald's, and that only lasted 4 days because he couldn't seem to work the toaster, and he burned the buns, and so he was fired pretty quickly. But then he did get a job washing pots and pans. The Bulova, we were in Danbury, Connecticut. Bulova was a local company there, and they were thrilled with his washing pots and pans, and they said, well, why don't you just give up your reporter job and come and work for us full time? So, it was that kind of thing. I did some work at the emergency room, taking people's insurance. And then I did switchboard at night for people. Back then, they had switchboards for their offices. And, you plugged in and got everybody's names and what they needed. So we had a lot of fun with that part. And then we were ready. And what the guidebook said is start with South America. But I'm just showing you this first picture of the cover because this is where we ended up, trapped for 26 days. It started out as a good trip, but I'll tell you later about how this ended up where we were trapped on this raft. And as you can see, there's a jungle all around, and it was a dead end off this Madre de Dios. So there was no land whatsoever, which we couldn't fathom. But when they say flood season in the Amazon, that's what they mean. For thousands of miles, the water comes down from the Andes and spills over, and there's no bank. So there was no way of our walking out. We started out, of course, on the Madre de Dios where there was a bank. But so now we realized that we're not quite on the river we started with. And also there were lots of animals and sounds of animals in this jungle and the trees. There was howling and shrieking, and we knew that there were jaguars and ocelots that could be in these trees. And there were, you can see down at the bottom, there's a snake. There were anacondas around that could really crush a person. If they're big enough, they can swallow you whole. So, and there were caiman, which are the alligators that are, some say alligator, some crocodile, say crocodile, but it's the South American one. So they've got big teeth too. And then there, of course, were the piranha that we had eaten ourselves in some of these tributaries. So we knew they were around, and we were afraid of swimming because if you start bleeding, if you get caught on a branch underneath and you start bleeding, they're going to come and get you. And then there was a little candiru, which is the worst of all. And we had been told by this man, Juan, who suggested taking this raft. He said, never go in the water, especially there are these candiru. And candiru are very small, but they have these teeth, and they will go up your orifices and chew you from inside out, chew your intestines and kill you that way. So there were all those things, but in the long run, we did have to decide to swim. But as I say, we were trapped for 26 days and without food. So I will now go to the happier part. Let's see. I'll give you some of this backstory. I don't have any pictures of when we were trapped because we were afraid night and day that we were going to be killed or dying. So I wasn't thinking of taking pictures, but I was the photographer person. I loved taking pictures, and Fitz wrote a column for the newspaper that he had left, we told our bosses, and his boss said, "We'll write a column and send it back whenever you get to a mailbox." So this was in the Andes. This was our second anniversary that a friend took, and we were 26 and 25. I was the older woman here, and our friend took it, who we traveled with. We would meet people and travel. He was from France, and so we had a lot of fun meeting people from different countries. There really weren't many people traveling back then, young people. So we were always happy to meet somebody who could it felt kind of like home, because we were away for a number of months. We didn't know Spanish really in the beginning, just a little bit. So what we did is, the cheap way was, we went to, I'm going to put this highlighter on, a laser pointer. This is the map of South America where we started our trip around the world. It was said to be the cheapest way. This was the cheap route. First go from, we took a car that somebody needed taken down to Florida. So we were coming from Connecticut, took the car down to Miami, and then got a flight to Barranquilla. It was a red eye for 60 some odd bucks, very cheap, and came in at 4 in. Now, Barranquilla was the tip of Colombia where we were starting, and it was really it was an awful shock, really quite a shock, because Fitz, as I say, he hadn't really traveled. He always said, "Oh, I traveled to Niagara Falls and to Vietnam." I mean, he had traveled more, but he likes the sound of things sometimes. So that was pretty dramatic. And so I looked at his eyes, because I was looking for comfort too, because this place, it had people, soldiers with guns at shops, outside of shops. And we wanted to get some groceries, and people were falling out of the bars. There were a lot of bars there. It had been a naval place right on the water. So it was not a place you thought, "Oh no, if this is the way it's going to be, maybe we should go home." When I saw Fitz's face, I thought he wanted to get home right away. And we had left, we'd left our jobs. People had given us parties. We just couldn't go back and face that. So I said, "Well, okay, let's see what's next in the itinerary." And we went to Cartagena, and that was a wonderful spot. So now we were on the upswing. It was we hadn't really heard of it. It didn't seem like North Americans had ever been there, but it's a beach place with a lovely community. We stayed at a little, what would be called an Airbnb now, and it was in somebody's home. And people would come by selling papayas and singing, and it was just very, very nice. And we got to know some of the Colombians there, who really helped us with learning our first Spanish. We did not meet anybody for a month who was not from Colombia, so there were not travelers at all. And thank heavens, the people were very friendly. We'd go to a cafe and we'd have fun with our dictionary. So I'm showing you this map also because I'll show you what our itinerary was just quickly. This was the plan: go to Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, down Chile, and then up, and we were going to cross over some of Brazil and go across to Africa for the next continent from Rio. But of course, things didn't develop that way. One thing is we just enjoyed ourselves so much. We spent much longer at each country because people would invite us places, and then we were open to it. So we would go with them and on their vacations or over the weekend. Now, this is the means of travel. This is the Panama Highway that I certainly think I thought the Panama Highway would be a highway of, a paved highway, maybe 2 lanes at least. uh, well, it's just one lane, and evidently it's still like that, because somebody in one of these talks said they'd been there recently and it was still like that, at least in some of the places. So you can see it's very difficult to make a road in this this is the Andes, the foothills of the Andes. This is the dry season. So if they're old buses, if a bus breaks down, that's our means of transportation was mostly buses. So everybody travels and with things on the top, sometimes chickens and goats. And so everybody had to get out because something had happened with the engine. So you just hope that the driver does have good repair skills and that he has the equipment, because there's nobody coming to help. There's no radio, there's no cell phone back then. This was 1972 and 73. So things were very different, and not even any phone booths. I mean, people just didn't call. It was really, with our parents, we just wrote letters, and maybe 3-4 weeks later, we'd get a letter ourselves. Now here also, when you're traveling, if one person breaks down or one vehicle, then anybody else coming along, mostly buses, they'd have to wait. And the other thing is, because there's only one lane, then everybody goes, they have a schedule. You go one way every other day. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you would go south, for instance. And then if you wanted to go north, then you would have to wait till Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. So, and I think Sunday they probably didn't go. So you were really, there weren't many cars. You were really, it had to go along with what the schedule was. Now we stopped at this little town. This is just to show you the type of trip. It was a lot of fun. As of course we were young, and we went to San Augustine, was a little village that was supposed to be lovely in the guidebook, but they didn't tell us that there were some beautiful pre-Inca stone carvings to see. They'd just been found the year before, so probably the guidebook had been written before that. So now some people told us about that, the local people, and we got a guide, and you had to take a horse to get there. There was not a road. So there was one other person, they called us gringos, foreigners, and we went on horses. Now, I had ridden a horse, not up in the mountains like this, but I had ridden one back in, I guess when I was at college, a little bit, not a lot, but Fitz hadn't really ridden except for, he said, on a horse in a fair. So now we're going along, and it's a 1,000-foot drop. You're going to go down here, cross this bridge, and then somehow, get around here, and there's a path up here. You've got to get up and over these foothills to find those idols, they call them, idols of the height, altos de los ídolos. So, Fitz was up for it. I was up for it. We were young, so we got on those horses. But now Fitz, his horse decided, I don't know if he was falling asleep, he was bored, daydreaming. He went off. You can't really see it, but there was a rock here. It wasn't all that big, but it was hanging out over that valley. And I was scared to death, and he turned back. All 4 hooves of that horse were on that rock, which looked slippery, even though it was dry, but for a horse's hooves, the horse didn't know what to do. So Fitz turned around and said to me, what do you do? And I said, pull those reins. I knew the horse obviously didn't want to go over either. So I said, just pull them and let him know that you want him to go backwards. And very carefully the horse did, and he had a big body on those little hooves, and they were all on that precipice. So he was able to do it, and then we carried on. Phew. And there are the, well, this is what we saw, was this kind of a statue. They weren't all that big, you know, maybe 4 feet or something, but they had just rediscovered them. They've been lost for a couple of 100 years because nobody's out there. It's hard to get to. And they were pre-Incan, or pre-Columbian, I should say, at least. This they thought was probably a tomb that this idol was watching. Now here was another adventure that we wanted to see the jungle, or I was especially interested, and now we're in Ecuador, Quito, so that's the capital, and we went to a travel agent and said, well, can we go to the jungle? We'd heard that there's the Napo River, which is a tributary to the Amazon. We weren't planning to go on the Amazon, we were going on down to Chile, but this would be at least a chance to see what the jungle looked like. And the travel agent said there's no traveling there, but you could just take a bus. I mean, there's no guided tour. So we took a bus for a couple of days. We didn't realize it would be that long. And we got there and there was nothing there really. There was really no town. It was called Tena, but maybe it was 3 houses, no hotel or anything. And we realized we'd have to get back on the bus because he only came every 2 or 3 days. So these people, they were coming because it was a holiday. It was what we call Halloween. They're All Souls Day, and they have a long weekend of 4 days or so. So these people were coming, and they had a place across in the real jungle, and they said, well, come with us, you know, we couldn't help but overhear you. This is Oswaldo. He understood English. He was a student, Ecuadorian student. So we decided there's Fitz here. And so we thought, well, why not? So there were 23 of us. We all got into that pecky, and they took us off for a wonderful adventure. And that's where we first had our first piranha. Now then, you know, the people were just great. And we just couldn't believe. I tried to think, gee, would I just say to somebody, well, come on vacation, you know, with us, when we hear that they don't know what to do, they're at a bus stop, but they were like that. And so this is back in the Andes. We're walking around because this is the Atavalan tribe who have these beautiful weavings. Here's one. They're all in the mountains that we were walking, and we went there Saturday from Quito because on Saturdays they bring their weavings and other things down to be sold at the market. So it's a very, very well-known one. So we went out for that, spent the night because it starts at 5 in the morning. Then later we walked, and then look at the beautiful people and their outfits. And they wear gold beads, which we'd heard were really, that's where they put their money, not in a bank, but around as necklaces. And the little kids wear the same clothes as their parents. Here's one child who, adorable little girl, and she's got her little doll on her back as her mother would have carried her on her back. Here's another, this is a different town, Ayacucho, and just shows you the kids. They just finished school, they were going home, they have some carry their chairs with them back and forth. And they just were very curious, very friendly, and they had not seen many people from North America. So they and they hadn't really seen a camera much. So they were certainly curious. And here now, this is Eve who took the picture, the photograph, and this was our anniversary. We walked up with him from Cusco, Peru, the capital, and we of the Inca Empire, and this is Inca Sacsayhuaman, the beautiful background here of, it looks like a puzzle pieces, just fit in beautifully, those stones. But now here's Eve. I asked him, and if he would go near those alpaca. I thought, well, this will make a great photograph can you go over there? And, you know, he was very obliging. And then, of course, he got too close and the alpaca was spitting and coming after him. But I thought, wow, I've got a great shot, you know, for, he may not have been amused, but anyway, it was, you know, a good picture, I thought. So this is Bertrand, his friend, and Fitz. Fitz is wearing a suit jacket. That's what he always wore, a little bit different, but, you know, he never knew when he might have to be, go to something formal. And actually, we did once go to the embassy in Peru, in Lima. So he did have his jacket. And this is just showing the beautiful valleys. Oh, geez. This is our Christmas tree. We're now in La Paz, and this is the kind of thing we wanted to have a Christmas tree. We were a little homesick. I'd never been away for Christmas before, so we made put some gifts around. This is the kind of place we would stay, and backpackers would do that. Now, while we were waiting in La Paz, Bolivia, for our money, which we didn't have cards back then, we just everything was a little bit more, I don't know if we'd call it primitive in a way, but when you think of how you can just do so many things now on the laptop, but back then we had to write for our money. We didn't want to carry a lot of money. We had American Express, which you could buy ahead of time, but then you didn't want to carry a lot of it. So then we would write and ask for the bank to send us some more. And then we had to wait because the mails were so slow. So meantime, we loved La Paz, and that was the Christmas time. We went up to this mountain, which is the highest ski mountain in the world, Mount Chacaltaya, 17,000 feet high. And this man we went up with a ski club. It was a student ski club. And this young man asked us if we would skip the skiing and go with him cave climbing. So he had all the equipment, and we thought, and he needed somebody. I guess he was gambling that he could get somebody, because you had to roll over the snow that really could drop down into crevasses. So you had to put that pick on one side, and then the person would roll. And if they happened to fall in, then the others would pull this rope. And luckily that didn't happen to us. But anyway, he seemed to know what he was doing, or we thought he did. And we got to that's me. Somebody thought it was a local person, but that's because I did buy one of these. It was a blanket, and then I just used it as a poncho because it was so cold up there. We really weren't prepared for going up. Although I see these guys are not even wearing gloves, and they're looking so nonchalant that you know, I mean, I remember it being very cold, but there they are smoking and going down into the cave. Now, this is what happened to us. This is where we're getting into the real jungle. And we met another couple at it was another market, and they wanted to have somebody visit. They were from Idaho, and they were professors. They were young, but they were studying the Iskabakabu tribe, and they wanted somebody to come visit because they were homesick for hearing English. And they kept pleading with us. They would write, I think we got 3 letters, and we kept saying, well, our itinerary, we're supposed to go the other way. We're going down towards Chile. And they were back all the way up into Peru on a river, Ucayali. They said, well, you can just skip going down there, come see the real Iskabakabu. There are only 26 left. They were massacred, most of them, except these 26. The missionaries brought them from Brazil. They had been massacred by other tribes. So I had thought, and I think Fitz did too, that they would be wearing their, you know, their attire from the jungle. but the missionaries had brought them these clothes. But other than that, they were living the way they would, and it was a real jungle away from everything. So we stayed there a week, and Fitz is playing a game here with them, and the jungles all around, and the rivers on in the foreground that you can't see. But he's making up some game like hide and seek or capture the flag, and you can see their houses. They were lined up, and the kids are very cute. So Fitz is behind the house, and they're going to. You can see this little boy. They're just excited to be playing, and now he's going to run in with his rag, I guess, kind of a capture the flag kind of thing. This is where we stayed with Bob and Barbara, the anthropologists, in their tent, and the Iskabakabu had made them a roof. Here they come. And this is the river off of the Ucayali where they lived, and where we knew we would go in every day because it was so hot. You went in swimming there, which, well, not really swimming, just bathing, a quick time in, because you knew there were caiman, and you knew there were a piranha and all those things that I told you about, snakes and all. So they washed their clothes there. They washed the dishes. We did too. So, and that's a dugout canoe there. Now this, because we were off the Ucayali, this was the plan to go up the Ucayali River and across down the Amazon, and then come down to Rio that way. But what happened was we were now into the flood season, and we didn't realize how fast that happens, and the boats were no longer going from Pacapa, was the town we had left to see the Iskabakabu. We went back there to get a bigger boat to take us up this bigger river, but none were going. And they said the only way to get a boat now was to fly from Pacapa to Madre de Dios. And in the pink, you could see that would take us up this way and to the Amazon. That was the only boat left that was available for the 3 months. So we said, okay, we'll do that. And we did. We got a plane. It took a little while. There was a lot of big lines to get this one little DC-3. And so it took us a few days, and we had 10 days to get that last boat. So we thought we were going to make it, and then this happened. This crashed, and our DC-3, you can see the plane wing off here, and the landing gear is twisted, and this is right after. So I was out, and Fitz was out, and people are getting the cargo out. And this is Fitz looking, well, we were in shock because it crash landed, and we didn't really know what happened. There were 13 of us that were passengers, and this is what it landed on. It was really more of a pasture. They were stopping, we thought, at a village, and on their way to Puerto Maldonado. It turned out, as we followed the others, again, we were the only people that were so-called tourists. The rest were local. And we tried to understand where we were going, and it turned out it was a penal colony where all the murderers and rapists, the worst criminals in Peru, they had taken out to this jungle to where they couldn't really get away because it was jungle. So there we were until another plane came in, which took a few days because of the mud. They had to wait till it dried. Now, because of that, we missed our boat. And this is where the story really changes. Because of missing the boat, we didn't know what to do because another boat wasn't coming for 3 months. And so we were sitting in this little tiny cafe, four tables, and it was a mud floor. or a dirt floor. And we were complaining to each other, what will we do? What are we going to do now? And it wasn't a town you were dying to stay in for 3 months. So this man overheard us, and he came over, very debonair, really, and he could speak English. His name was Juan Nevenschwander, and he said, may I help you? I couldn't help but overhear you. And so we said, sure, please sit down. And he said, this is what you can do. You can take a raft. That's what we all do here. I just came back from a raft. I speak English well because I had been in Chicago for 3 years, and I'm an engineer, and I'm exploring for a bank. I'm exploring for metals and for gold here. And so he said, I just came down with a raft from the north of Madre de Dios. And that's what you should do, is take a raft. It's what everybody does. And I we were skeptical at first, but he made it sound so good. And he said it's very easy. You can go down to the river and you can just get a raft from somebody. There are lots of rafts along the river, and they don't want them anymore. They only go downriver. They don't go upriver. So if they are coming from upriver and they don't need them, they'll be happy to give one to you. So then I did ask, well, what about, would there be any, if the river's going, what about if it flows off somewhere? Oh no, just stay in the middle, you'll be fine. And even if there's a detour, he said, like here, it will come back. It winds around, just stay in the middle, but it always comes back anyway. And that's when the river, spreads out. So we thought, okay, well, I guess then we'll be all right. I mean, I did think that first, and I was kind of saying to Fitz that he would just love it because he loved Huck Finn, and so he did, even though he was more skeptical, he did decide. See, here's another one. This is, of course, I didn't take this. This is a Google Earth. So we went down, we got the raft. This man, Ernesto, he was very nice. He cut the raft for us. It was 8 logs. I know it looks kind of a little, not what everybody would want to be on, but again, we were in our 20s and we would hop from one to another of these round logs. And Juan had told us just go down to the lumber yard and get yourself some wood and make a platform, and you can put a tent on it, and you can really make it the way you want, make it your home. So it was really our first home that we hadn't rented. It was we owned it. So we went and got some plastic, and we put the frame up, and they said, you can go to a store that sells plastic, the hardware store, they use this plastic for their own homes. Sometimes they add a wing on, it's very hardy. And so we called our raft and tent the Pink Palace. There is pink, also pink, but it's more blue really, but there's pink plastic too. There it is. The Pink Palace was the ambassador's home in Lima, where we had been able to go once. And so we called this our Pink Palace because it was our first home, and it was kind of a bit of a chuckle because obviously it wasn't exactly like the ambassador's big, huge home. Now, this man named Jim gave us this bottle. He said, it's a bottle of beer. He said, we have that tradition here, and I think you do too, to christen your craft. So you throw it and break it on the side. So these are the kids, of course, they were there on vacation and enjoying it. So here was a little bit of a fiasco because I did not hold on to it the way I should have. And it's supposed to be good luck if you break it. So now it just went plunk into the water. And we didn't have time to go back and get another one. So we said, oh, it can't really be bad luck. We've got to go, and we're not superstitious. So we had to take off, and it was getting late in the day. You could see here's kind of a big wide spot. These are big balsa logs, but they're certainly not all perfect. And the kids are saying goodbye and laughing away. We could not control this raft. It was really big, and we couldn't get it into the current. But we had no idea, even though they told us we got a license. The harbor master gave us a license because he said anybody can take a raft. But yet I don't know how they really get it easily into the current. Maybe they don't. But we kept knocking against the bank quite a bit. There was a big bank here, and despite that it was the rainy season. Now here we are going down this beautiful river, Madre de Dios. You can see there's nobody around. It was virgin territory, all rainforest, for 500 miles, and much more, of course, but we were going on the river for 500 miles to get to River Alta. And if, say we were down there, this is not my photograph, but just to show you, the boat, you see there are no boats or rafts on here at all. It was really, we were the only ones, except 2 canoes in the days that we were going down this river. 2 canoes just staying on the side with motors. They did not try to come out into the current. So we're going along, and I just wanted to show you, I don't know if you could see a little bit, this is the type of thing I believe that we were trapped in. It comes off of the river because with the rainy season, it swells up and makes these little channels. And then they end up as a dead end unless they come around the way these up here do. But once in a while, there's one like that, which we didn't know about, of course, before. So this was good times. We were having a great time. Fitz was Huckleberry Finn. We both had our Panama caps on, or hats. And the river is just lulling along. It was like a lake. I mean, it was big, and we could see that there was a strong current that we could not pull in. But yet on the top of it, it just looked very calm. And so he's resting, relaxing there. The rudder we found out, really didn't do much. But anyway, we were having a great time for a few days. Here we are having a great time over here. And these 2 pictures, they're watercolors that a woman came up and said she had read the book. This was in North Carolina at a bookstore, and her name was Ann Sadler. And she said, oh, I made a couple of paintings for you after I read the book. I just, with the images I had of you and Fitz on the river, I'd like to give them to you. And I said, that is wonderful. And now I just thought, well, I'll put them in here because I don't have any pictures really. And this really conveys the feeling. I wrote, one of the chapters was called Flying Free, and we did feel so free. And there she's conveyed that, the butterflies around. There was much more jungle. This was all green jungle. But anyway, I thought they were beautiful. And this is us sleeping at night, because we went day and night. It was going to take us 5 days and nights if we did it without stopping. If it was, it would be double the time if we stopped for the night. But as it turned out, we really couldn't stop for the night because we really couldn't bring it in very well at all. We tried and we couldn't. It was too strong a current. So here we are sleeping, and we got used to it. And again, she put a beast here, and it did have more jungle there. I'm going to read to you because Jane mentioned reading, as you might want to know how an author sounds. So I'm going to read The Storm. If you just look at this picture, you can imagine a little bit, this was before the storm, but we're sleeping at night. So I thought, well, this kind of gives you a little bit of a image as I read this the chapter called The Storm. I'll just read part of it. We slept soundly during our fourth night on the river, trusting the Madre to carry us safely through the darkness, just as she had on previous nights. We'd become used to her soft movement. I dreamt I was riding a merry-go-round, smoothly undulating up and down on the wooden horse, when abruptly the carousel screws loosened. It spun high into the air, then plummeted downward. I woke to the raft in a tailspin. Ernesto had warned us not to let the raft spin. It was too late. Thunder and lightning were right on top of us. Fitz, I yelled, yanking his shoulder as lightning flashed through the plastic tent like giant floodlights. He didn't wake up. Fitz! What? He mumbled. A storm, it's huge. Cracking thunder muffled the sound of my voice. The raft rocked and continued to spin wildly, lifted, then pounded hard on the waves again. Whoa, Fitz yelled. What the hell is happening? Storm, I shrieked over the thunder. Bolts of lightning illuminated the tent enough for me to see Fitz inching forward on his stomach to the door flap, a foot from our sleeping bag. He pushed himself up onto his knees, then pulled back the flap to stare into the roiling night. His tall frame swayed as he hung onto the door. Jesus, he yelled toward me. I can't see anything. Fitz, get inside. It's too dangerous. If he fell in, I'd never find him in the dark. Just then something slammed the bow, pulling the raft downward. Holly, watch out. I dropped my head, hearing rip through the blue and pink plastic wall. My God, Fitz screamed. Holly, Holly. The ripping sound ceased as the motion of the raft stilled. My heart pounded in the darkness as I lay stomach down, silent, not daring to move. Rain pelted through an apparent hole in the tent. Fitz! I tried to raise my head, but something jabbed me and held me down. The raft was tipped forward with the new weight. Jesus, Holly, are you all right? Fitz's voice hollowed out of the night. That goddamn tree trunk flew right in here. I thought, my God, your head. His voice trembled as he moved toward me. I'm okay, I said. I lay flat, listening to him, trying not to panic at the tipping of the raft. He reached me and bent close to my cheek. We've got to hurry. This damn thing could sink the raft. Close your eyes so the roots don't scratch them. Cover your head. He groaned as he tried to lift the trunk. The roots scraped my naked back. They felt like they were going deep. I screamed. I'm sorry, I'm just one goddamn man here, Fitz said. The rain was piercing me like needles. It won't budge. I tried to be quiet so Fitz could concentrate. All of a sudden, I felt a stinging, burning sensation. It began on my scalp, then ran down my neck onto my bare shoulders, and then my back, like flames blistering my skin. I'm on fire. Please help me. Fitz jostled the tree trunk again. What is it? I can't stand it, I said. I can't see anything, he yelled. Lightning flashed. I'm burning. Fire ants, he said. I pleaded with him to help me as the unseen ants rushed over my body, biting relentlessly. I tried to lift my head, but I was pinned down inside a chamber of tree limbs and roots. My hair's caught. I wanted to rip my long hair out as Fitz tried to encourage me to go backwards to get out. Come on, you're almost here. Fitz lifted the last part of the roots and I was out. He grabbed my shoulders. I collapsed into his arms, sobbing as we rocked violently back and forth with the waves. Fire ants still covered my skin. I can't stand it. I wept, pulling away from Fitz to slap at them. The pink palace jerked up and down, tipping deeper into the river. The raft, Fitz turned toward the bow. We've got to get this tree off. Grab whatever you can and shove hard. Despite the merciless stinging, I forced myself to help. My upper body strength wasn't anywhere near Fitz's, but adrenaline helped me to push as hard as I could. Fitz shouldered the trunk, lifting and jostling it until it slid off the raft and disappeared into the river. We hoped, moving beyond us, not to ram us again. So that is how we ended up, and I'm going to show you the next slide. The raft and tent do not look like this. This was a previous picture I took before we were trapped, and really when we were on land. But this is all I have to show what the raft looked like. Then it was ripped apart during that storm. So when we ended up bumping against, for the first time in those days, we'd never been to the side. We bumped against the forest, and the rain and thunder were still going on. So we were able to tie up now for the first time. This tent was all holes, and we were so exhausted, even though it was pouring, we just lay down and fell asleep until the next morning. Now, when we woke up, we didn't realize it was sunny like this, but the tent was ripped apart, and we had more plastic, so we figured we could fix it. We discovered that our food had gone over with the storm. We had just a couple of things, like a can of tuna and a little bit of sugar. And then we realized, we were only a day away from our destination, River Alta, but now Fitz noticed that there was no land under all this. He looked under as we were trying to untie ourselves, and he said, there's no land here. So for hundreds of miles in, we weren't going to be able to walk out. This was when we realized that we were not in the regular river. Fitz was also the one that noticed first that the current was much, much slower. And I kept saying, oh, it's going to come around. It's just a detour. Like Juan said, it's going to be okay. Let's just keep going, and we'll come out into the main river again. And Fitz, what else could we do? We had to have hope. So we did go as far as we could. It was a dead end. And then we realized we really were trapped with no way out. Maybe the harbor master would send a plane. He had said if we didn't arrive in those 5 days, he would call the harbor master in River Alta. They would send a plane, but nothing was happening. So after a while, we realized the only way was to get into that water to try to escape. But as I say, it was 26 days we were there. We did try a few escapes. This is just some pictures to show you what we were afraid of, what we were hearing in the jungle, the howling and the shrieking. This is not my picture, obviously, of this jaguar. This is not my picture, but this is what we were contending with. So I'm just showing you. And it might even be, I don't know if that's a piranha or not, but that's one of the caiman that were in those swamps. And this is a snake that you can see is wrapped around a big branch or a trunk that could very well wrap around a person. So I'm just going to read you one last thing, which is a couple of paragraphs. And it's another thing we had to contend with. The thumping wakes me. Small dark shapes bump against the faded sheeting of the pink and blue plastic tent on our balsa log raft. It's the bees again. They want in. It's only about 9 in the morning, but already our tent is sweltering. The tropical sun casts an intense circle of light halfway up the thin plastic. I want to open the flap for air, but when I do, hundreds of bees will swarm inside to cover our emaciated bodies like hot moving blankets. They will lap the sweat off our sunburned tissue paper skin, stinging constantly at our slightest movement. Slowly, the Bolivian jungle is swallowing us alive. So that's the end. And thank you very much for your time. Any questions, of course, I'd be happy to talk about anything you might want to know, or it is supposed to, some people want to know about a movie. Oh, yes, I see a hand.
Could you talk about the movie? And also, someone had asked in the chat, what was the anticipated number of days to cover the 500-mile journey?
I'm sorry, what was the what?
What was the anticipated number of days to cover the 500-mile journey? But I think you already answered that, 5 days and nights.
Right. 5 days and nights if we went days and nights, or 10 days if we just went in the day.
Do you want to talk about the movie, the status of the movie options?
Sure. Well, I'm sure, hopefully it's going to happen, but it's been a couple of years, and I just signed another contract for the rights again, because Matt Sharman is the one that's producing and writing it. He's written the first draft of the script, and he's finding, now he has to find money and a studio. So, and then after that, I guess, you find the director somewhere along that line, and then he says actors will, if you find a good director, then the actors will come because they know the director is good. And so, we're excited, but movies take a while. So it may not, he's actually coming this summer to do another movie in Boston, and with Haley Barry. And so I guess he does a number of things all at one time, but he called a couple of months ago and said he was done with the first draft, and he was having another person who is also a producer from Australia who had read it over and wants to put in a few extra nuances. And he said it is hard with the movie that's on so much water, that costs a lot more. And he wants it to be authentic, so he's not looking to animate any of it, or he wants to find a place where it can be done, and it's difficult, he said, with the lighting and the moving on the water. So, and finding a director who can do that, and filmmakers. So anyway, we'll just wait and see. It's kind of a fun next stop.
Holly,
Yeah.
there's a question in the chat room. Can you talk about how you stayed hydrated, or what you did for water on your trip?
Yeah, good question. Well, as you see, that water is all around, but you saw in a couple pictures, it's brown, and it's full, it's silty. It's full of debris, especially down in the swamp area. So we we had to drink it because it was at least fresh water, and that's all we had. But what we did is we had halazone tablets. Fortunately, they had not gone over with the storm. So, and then when we ran out of those, you put those in the water and leave those for 20 minutes. And it's supposed to, we also boiled it. We had that little cook stove on the back of the raft. So, we were using as much caution as we could. And I guess we were really quite dehydrated. But still, we were surviving because of that, those halazone tablets. And after we ran out of those, we did have iodine drops that you can drop in, a couple of those for a quart, I think it is. And those are supposed to kill a lot of things that are in the water. So we were very fortunate that even though we didn't have food, we did have that water that really was gritty. It had a lot of debris in it, and we had to really sift it out with our teeth. but it was water, so we used it.
Can I ask a personal question?
Sure.
All I could think of through the whole book that I read it was that you were probably so grubby. Like, did you get infected? Like, once you had bites and insect things, did it get worse? Like, I can't imagine it.
When you say did it get worse, you mean all the bites and?
Yeah. Did they just heal up?
Yeah, well, again, I suppose maybe because we were young. I mean, they did over a few days if you didn't scratch them and make them bleed, because there were a tremendous amount of mosquitoes, and also those bees did sting constantly. But so we had to really discipline ourselves, because if you know what it's like with scratching a mosquito, it just feels worse, and then you're going to make it bleed and all of that. So we learned to be, try not to, and so we probably looked pretty awful, but we did anyway because we were getting thinner by the day. So I have no idea really what we looked like, except that I did see a picture afterwards. And the hair, I think, was like a big nest. I hadn't brushed my hair, and it was long. So for 26 days. So yeah, we must have looked very appealing, I'm sure.
I don't know. I just think it's an amazing story.
Well, thank you. We at least we had our limbs.
Can you explain to me, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but can you explain to me however you managed to keep anything? How did you keep your camera through this whole trip? How did you keep your journal? Like,
well, we were again lucky in that, well, when we were trying to escape from and try to swim out, I just couldn't take the camera or anything but my journal. And I wish I should have, somebody said, oh, have it to show them, but it was small in the end. I mean, it was a big, the one I left on the raft is a big green one that's around here somewhere still. But then when we were swimming, I had a log, I used it as a log, but it was my account book. I put everything down. That's how I knew exactly what everything cost. And so I had that, and it still had some pages, and that was, narrow, a little notebook, kind of like an exam booklet, one of those blue exam booklets. And so I put that in my, around my waist, in my money waist belt. And it had a zipper, but I also had plastic that was around that to protect it around the little tiny notebook. So it made it unbelievably the only, it has a little bit of, it has rust on the staples that hold it together, but the actual paper is there. Oh, and I didn't mention that in the beginning, but this here on the cover is supposed to be one of the pages. The artist that did the cover was trying to depict that it was a journal that I had, and that really helped authenticate it for me, because although it's a memoir, but I tried to keep it as true to what really happened, because I did have every day I had written down what we did, not in great detail, of course, in there, but kind of like a log that people keep when they're going out to sea, and what the weather was, and what, a small couple, 2-3 sentences of what we did that day, what we might have caught that helped, we thought helped sustain us. Maybe we found a couple of snails or that type of thing that maybe we don't feel like eating anymore. But saved us back then. So that really helped. I couldn't have written it without that journal. At this time, well, when I wrote it, it took me quite a few years, but because going into it was hard. The fun parts, were the flashbacks or that kind of thing that lightened it up.
I thought the writing was really, really good. I really enjoyed it. How many copies of the book have been printed?
I haven't really found out lately, but I'm not sure. Maybe they seem happy. They keep sending me royalty checks, and they said, oh, it's still selling. I don't know if it's gone into other printings, but they said usually a book is about 2 years, and now this is in its 4th year. So they just said they're happy that it's still out there being read. And of course, I maybe it's partly, I don't know, people are reading more this year. They said they've sold a lot this year.
It was actually on the ebook bestseller list last spring.
Oh, that's right. I'm glad you mentioned that. I forgot. Right.
I think it was number 3.
What's that?
I think it was number 3.
Oh, boy. Well, I know that my agent said at one point, it was on, the ebooks are selling a lot because people can just order those. And I don't know if you do ebooks at the library. Do you? Yeah, you do.
In great volume, especially during the pandemic.
Yes, that's it. That's what they were saying.
So are you writing anything more? Are you going to write your second leg of the journey? Are you going to tell us then what happened?
I know once in a while I think I'm going to, but I'm having too much fun, I guess, with, we have 5 grandchildren now, and they live around here. So it's a lot of fun. I mean, now, especially now that we've had our vaccinations. Before that, we could see them with the masks. But at a distance, it was hard, but still, they're always doing such great things, such fun things. It keeps you distracted, right, about the rest of all these things that happen in the world. So it's a nice focus. And now we can get together and not have those masks on. So it's that keeps us going. So I really, they gave us something for our 50th anniversary, our kids to write about our lives, or I don't know, but I haven't really felt like writing more. A question will come a week and ask you something about what was your favorite toy or your favorite book or something like that. But I haven't, I did write something about my grandmother, but then I just want, I'd rather probably just tell it to the kids, and which, I'm sorry.
After I was reading at the end, after you survived this and went back, you went on all kinds of other trips. I don't know how you had the courage. I wouldn't have left the United States after that.
No.
And you also talked about having to get away from a circle of baboons. How did you do that?
Yeah, that was scary. That was in Africa, and we were lucky because they are pretty fierce, and they big, and those big fangs they have. It was just luck, and I think we started getting, making aggressive sounds to them. We didn't really know what you're supposed to do, but that must have helped because they did back off, and then we just ran, and I guess we were faster runners or something. But we didn't know a lot about all this animal behavior and all of that, so it was that was a surprise too, that they were there. But why should we be we shouldn't have been surprised, because it was their territory, and we were trying to get out of the the park, which it was dusk, and the bus that left didn't have any more room for us, and we didn't have a place to spend the night. There was a big fancy hotel, but we couldn't afford that. So very nicely, I mean, the people around the world, it does, when you travel, I find it does make you feel that people are, you know, there's so many really, really nice people out there. And so this man, he was a cook in that hotel, the fancy hotel. And I guess we were just hanging around near the door trying to figure out what are we going to do. And he said we could sleep on his floor. He had a small kind of a hut with a cement floor. And so that was very nice of him. And then the next day we were able to get, there were vans that came in and out. But that was the last one that day. And I just remember that I almost got in it. And then somehow this girl named Sunshine, she kind of pushed us aside and jumped in, and off they went. So there we had another adventure. But I'll always remember her name. I didn't know her at all, but Sunshine was, I guess somebody said, "Come on, Sunshine," and jumped in, and we had that nice experience of the man who took us in. So everything tended to be, we were very fortunate with all the people we met. And I definitely think travel, at least in those days, was a way of feeling that people are close together, no matter where they live, that there's that humanity that comes out when people see that other people need help. And so we met some wonderful people.
I have a question. Can I speak?
Oh, hi, Laura. How are
Oh,
you?
hi, Holly. Good. How are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah, wonderful to see you. I'm curious. I know at the conclusion of this and when you were rescued, you were in poor health and you had to get nursed back to proper health. So you certainly didn't continue your journey. But have you, and I know you and Jerry have traveled quite a bit, have you fulfilled that original goal of traveling around the world? Or did you kind of set that aside?
No, we did travel, a lot that second round. We went, first to France because of those French friends. They came to visit us and they said, "Oh, you must finish what you started. That's the thing you should do." Because we were in a quandary, what should we find jobs? We weren't really, that well that we, we were going through a lot of what is the meaning of life and all of that. And so they said, you really, come and visit us. And we're, one of them had a girlfriend who was it was Bertrand's girlfriend came to visit us. And she said, yes, come to the Vendage, they called it, the vineyards. Her family had vineyards, and it was September, and it was time to pick the grapes. So she said, why don't you start here, come to France? And France, of course, isn't, it was scary the way the jungle was. So it was a little bit more secure. We still had to take that plane across the Atlantic. So that was a little bit, after having had those plane trips. But then we got there and we got our feet wet, and then we went to visit these friends in England that we had met down in South America also. So we stayed 2 or 3 months, and then we flew on a cheap flight. They have a lot of great flights, I think probably still, in England that you can get very cheap. So we got one, it was like $81, as I recall, to go to Bali, well, Java. So that we figured, well, let's get all the way out there, because then, because of our tendency to stay quite a while at each place. So if we started and then we went back overland, so we did not go over the Pacific yet, but no, I'm happy with what we did, we had another practically a whole year. We got back in August and we left in September. So we saw some beautiful countries in Asia, you know, in Thailand and Java, Bali, and we went to Nepal and just going across. And then when we got to India, we crossed India, and then we took a flight to Ethiopia. They were having, they didn't like Americans, North Americans at that time, so we didn't know that, but we were there a week. We thought, well, we might as well, the plane was stopping there, so we might as well see Ethiopia. The people are gorgeous, and but their emperor, Haile Selassie, had told them that we were, you know, terrible people, and they were in a drought. I mean, they were, people were starving. And so we met this priest, and he said, oh, we said we'd like to help. And then he said, well, okay, go out. And he told us where to go out into the desert, Harar, and go out and take pictures, and you know, Fitz was a reporter, and write about it, so the Americans will realize what's happened. I mean, it turned out that, I mean, we did give a lot of food to them, but it didn't get to them because the middlemen kept it. So the people who were starving never received it. But we didn't actually get out there because we went to speak to the embassy first. We were trying to be a little bit more careful than we had been in South America, you know, with taking the raft. So we talked to the Peace Corps and the embassy, and they said, no, we're getting out. The Peace Corps was leaving. It was getting very dangerous to be in Ethiopia. So we did take our flight to Kenya, which was where we were on our way to, and then Tanzania, then back up to Sudan and Egypt and Greece and England. So we did get quite a bit in that last year. We also had a couple hospital stays along there too, maybe because we weren't as well as we had been in the beginning. So, you know, we'd get hit by some kind of dysentery or something, and it was actually the very anniversary. We always have an anniversary of our day that we got out. And that very day we had something that we got sick, and we ended up in a hospital in India. So I suppose I could write about all those exciting moments, but they're not quite the same. You know, it's obviously a little bit different than the first one. But maybe if I live to 90 and the grandchildren have grown up, right, then maybe I'll do that. But yeah, so I'm content, but of course we always want to travel, right? Like if it's in your blood. We're taking a class now about Morocco, but I don't know if they're really going to go. We have to see how safe it is. So we have to all hang in there, right?
Holly, I would definitely recommend that you keep writing your travelogue. I think it was great.
Oh, thank you.
Does anybody else have questions? Because I think we're ready to wrap this up.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm just wondering, how has that experience affected the rest of your life? I mean, so far, and do you relive it at all?
You know, I'm sorry. I think my volume isn't very good for, I don't know if can you say it a little louder, or maybe somebody else hears it better?
I'm wondering how the experience has affected your life, and if you relive any of the experiences at all?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I think writing the book definitely, without realizing it at the time, it definitely helped me put some things in place, in perspective, because I think there's always, you know, those life and death experiences that they can hang over kind of with questions, why am I here and that kind of thing. Not all the time, but it did, writing it somehow helped with that. And so I've been able to let it go, I guess. I mean, obviously I don't ever forget it. It was a spiritual thing. There was a lot that when we were trapped, we had many hours. So we were either physically trying to get out, or we were questioning what should we do, or we were questioning our lives. What do we want in our lives that would make us, would drive us to have that survival instinct to keep going, because it was, as we were losing weight and energy, you could just say, okay, I'm just giving up. I can't do this anymore. And so we found things that we wanted to still do when we, if we would get out. We were only in our 20s, so there was a lot we still wanted to do. And I think we maybe were, as people being young, you just take your life for granted in terms of, oh, you're young and you're healthy, and then suddenly you've got that time to reflect. Well, wait a minute, this is what I want. This is what I want to go for if we get out of here, and we're going to get out of here, so we can do it. So that helped. There's a lot of reflection when you have time, and nobody else, just Fitz and me. So and some of those things that we wanted might not have ended up. Certainly there were things with food. We really wanted a restaurant, but I think the hunger was was making us go through every single wonderful meal we'd ever had. And we haven't had a restaurant, but that's okay. So not every dream ends up being the one you really want, right? I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Are there some people that haven't read the book and some people that have? I don't know if, I guess, Anne, did you read the book, or you're?
I actually read the book, and then a second time I listened to the book.
Oh, wonderful.
Excellent. I mean, it was very, very good. Very well written.
Oh, thank you very much. Well,
I've recommended it to family and friends. I thought it was so well done.
Oh, thank you. Well, I have to say, I'm honored if for somebody to be reading it again. That's wonderful. That's what any author would hope for, something, be very fortunate for that to happen. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it worth, people reading it, it makes it worth writing it, because some of it was difficult. And sometimes I'd say, oh, I just can't do this anymore. And then Fitz would say, well, so don't do it. So then I guess I have to get back on the horse again, because he wasn't sympathizing with it. I mean, he was a writer too, of course, at the newspaper. Excuse me. So if he came home and I said, oh, I can't stand that, which did happen here and there, but then I'd realize, well, what's a third of a book? It's really, if you're going to write a third of a book, then you've got to finish it, because otherwise it's not going to be a book, and you spend all that time doing it. So I guess I'd talk to myself like that and try to maybe go into a different part. If one part was too hard at the time, I just go, I don't know how most people write, if they write straight ahead, but I might take a break with one chapter and and just start a whole another part of the story that might have been easier or more fun. And then it took quite a while to piece it together because it wasn't really written the way, chronologically, the way it does end up being mostly chronological. But that's not, it just seems like a lot more to a book, writing a book, than I ever realized. So
Yes.
Holly, I'll
anyway,
give you my special endorsement because I read it and then my husband read it. Now that's a good book in my household.
oh, that's wonderful.
And
Well,
both of us can read it.
that is an honor too. And I'm always happy that both, men and women seem to like it, I mean, well, Fitz is, of course, in there. So I tried to be, make it both, both sexes that maybe, I don't know. Anyway, he's quite he's a person that you can, do his dialogue pretty well. And he's dramatic in that way. So, I tried to get his personality, and then I didn't want to be too, I didn't want it to be a woman's read,
Yeah,
I mean,
it was great.
of course, I love books that are just for women too, or there are a number of books, for book clubs that are, but I figured since it was about both of us, I wanted it to be accurate and straightforward, and so that that men would also like it. So I'm glad to know your husband did read it
Very
Yes.
good.
as well as you, of course.
It was great. All right, everyone, how we feeling? Good?
Yeah, a little stretching. Yeah.
I know. Holly, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this afternoon.
Well, thank you
Thanks
very much.
again.
And I really